vegetables. After the 1918 flu pandemic took away his parents when Don Antonio was only a teenager, he began drinking a glass of water with lemon at daybreak to help prevent illness. He also chewed chimot, a paste from tobacco extract and urao salt. At 100, all his teeth were intact and shining. Don Antonio lived long enough to be part of the 400 supercentenarians in the world, to see 3 generations grow, and to remain sharp to tell the stories of the old days. But what did it really mean to become a supercentenarian, someone who makes it to 110 and beyond? Did he want to live that long? What difference did it make to turn 110 instead of 80? What did his longevity mean to his descendants and the community? Don Antonio dreamed of a peaceful death, sitting in an armchair with newspaper in hand, sipping scotch on the rocks. But it was a fruitless desire because his grandkids believed he came from the long-lived land of the tattooing. He had the appearance, strength, and longevity of an oak tree. His vitality, as in the oak tree, symbolized life, and it was hard to imagine him falling down. Yet, to Don Antonio's disappointment, he seemed to have stopped aging once he reached 93. At this time, he will bid his grandkids farewell as if it were the last time he would see him. On our next visit, Abuelo, sturdy, sound, and charming, was still there to greet us. The first revelation of immortality came when Don Antonio narrated his close encounter with death. As a boy, he rode horses bareback and was learning how to lasso. However, once, when he was 18, as the horse got up on his back legs, Don Antonio lost control. One of his legs got tangled in the rope and he was dragged through the green prairie. Somehow, he managed to grab the rope and regain control of the horse. He had scratches and bruises on his back and head, but miraculously, he was still alive. This accident made him reconsider the direction of his life and leave Karachi, the mountain village that was the only home he had ever known. He packed his mule with his belongings and some food to survive the 70-mile journey on the Transandine Highway that was still under construction during the dictatorship of Juan Vicente Gomez in the early 20s. He left his younger brothers, Prado and Sixto, in the care of his aunt after the passing of their parents. Upon arrival to the city of gentlemen, Mérida, where I was born, Don Antonio tried to stay in a nice hotel, but got turned away due to his dirty clothes and bad smell. He soon realized that appearance made a difference. With the money his aunt had given him for the journey, Don Antonio bought soap, took a bath in the river, and got an elegant suit. After getting some rest in another hotel, luck turned his way. After a conversation with some Musues, foreigners, he found a job working with the oil company. Soon, Don Antonio was moving to Mene Grande, closer to Maracaibo Lake, on the west side of the country. Mene Grande was where an enormous quantity of black liquid came out of the earth. Even though Don Antonio had only finished 6th grade, he became a mechanical technician. During his time with the oil company, his political convictions became stronger, aligning with the social views of the labor union and against the political party of the Gomez dictatorship that ended in 1935. In the late 40s, Don Antonio worked for General Motors and later Ford as a mechanic. With a daily income of $3, he bought his own sedan. I remember my Uncle Carlos, Don Antonio's youngest son, proudly telling me that Grandpa was the first one to bring a Ford to Mene Grande, and the second person in town to own a car. Don Antonio began a line of taxis that little by little grew to include an array of different old cars, from Mercury to Chevrolet Impala. He transported workers to the oil company and kids from wealthy families to school. He established his home in Mene Grande, building a house of tall ceilings and a front patio to spend the afternoon under trinitarias, ferns, and hibiscus. He set up an open garage with a 2-foot-high toolbox and a car lifter, as well as an spacious kitchen with a round table in the middle to seat his large family. This is the home I remember where he lived with my grandma, Teresa de Jesus Murillo de Bravo, whom he married when he was 40, and with whom he had 7 children: Marlene, Miriam, Antonio, Amparo, Eglee, Vilma, and Carlos. Carlos was born when Don Antonio was 16. When I came into this world, Don Antonio was 72. I was the second of what would eventually be 30 grandchildren. I can still recollect how big he seems as I was growing up. He was 6 feet tall and well-built from years of work. Despite the bell he carried to impose discipline among his rowdy 30 grandchildren, he was always kind and never hit us at all. He had amazing hands with beefy fingers that were clumsy when grabbing a spoon to eat. His broad palms alone could cover my back. The fingers showed calluses that had smoothed with time. The skin on the back of his hands was dark from years of working in the sun, and the network of veins mapped the journey of his life. Those hands reassured me that my world was safe. They also made me wonder about the claims that Grandpa was immortal. Even if death came looking for him, surely he would be able to catch it like a fly in his enormous hands.